Neufeld, and I'm the studio technician at Artists for Kids and also a practicing artist. Today I'm going to lead you on an activity that is focused on looking, photographing, and drawing. In my artwork, I'm very interested in the homes that we live in. They are important places for us and they influence us in subtle ways, like the view out of our windows or the path we take from outside to inside. I want to think about the people who built our houses, the time and labor they spent to make them that we often don't think about. I want us to look around our houses for the signs and traces of this work that was done before we came to live here. Some of the questions we're going to ask today are: who contributed to the construction of our homes? What materials are used to construct our homes, and where do these materials come from? I make artwork in houses that are no longer being used. I go into the houses to make changes to them to highlight the hidden structures within our homes. Here are a few images of houses that I've made artwork in. In this house that used to be on Grand Boulevard, I cut away the patterns that people had walked into the carpet. The carpet I removed was gray and packed down by years of people walking in this house. When I cut up the flooring, there was bright blue undercushion below, and I could imagine the installers crawling around on their hands and knees to put this undercushion in just to make it softer for people to walk on. In this house, I have cut away the walls to reflect the vaulted ceiling that was above these walls. You can see the wooden studs, the electrical, plumbing, and the venting for the fireplace. You can see the effort and time put into building a home that is warm and where water comes out of the taps and electricity comes out of the plugs without anyone ever having to think about it. In this house, I bashed all of the plaster off the cedar lath that made up the wall. In the plaster there were tiny bits of horsehair. Builders in the 1940s mixed horsehair with the plaster to help bind the plaster together. This is a house I didn't change at all. I found it like this, with this amazing view and no drywall, stripped down to its skeleton. It's nice to imagine what would have looked like in the past or what it could look like in the future, and also to observe the number of nails and screws it took to build. So much work goes into your average house. I want us to do some observing in our own houses today. We have been spending a lot of time in our houses lately, and it's easy to stop really seeing what's in front of us. Our homes keep us safe and comfortable. They keep out the weather and the animals, at least most of the time, and they shelter us. But they are also a part of nature. The wood and the drywall all come from resources provided by the earth. I want to show you a few artists from the Artists for Kids collection that also focus on homes or other spaces and how we look at the structures of a room. This work by Wayne Eastcott isn't necessarily a home, but this photograph really focuses on the built structure. From the concrete towers to this small shack lifted off the ground on this scaffold. It's also a great example of something so familiar to us that we don't always notice the complex engineering and work that would go into making a building like that way up off the ground. This painting by Betty Goodwin is of a bathtub. Notice how she has taken something that we see all the time that might even be a little bit boring or mundane, and she's given it the size and level of importance that we might not normally attribute to a bathtub. This painting is quite large, something like 4 feet by 4 feet, and the main subject is this wooden tub. But it's so beautiful and you can feel the care that she's put into rendering it so nicely. This is a painting by Aaron McSabney. Aaron also focuses on architectural spaces that are easy to ignore or not notice. By adding these colored bands, he highlights the movement in a place and emphasizes that even in somewhat bland spaces, there's opportunity for expression. I really like the placement of the bush here too. People have sculpted this bush. We try so hard to control nature, but we are nature. This is a drawing by Etienne Zach. This is a drawing of his studio, a place where he spends a lot of time. You can see the sprinkler heads on the ceiling and the way the wood floor above him is joined to his space. He's really looking at the details that make up his space. This is what I'm hoping that you will do today. Finally, this drawing by Robert Young is of an area in his house. He's focusing on the lines and patterns formed by the windows and the natural world outside his windows as well. This is a carefully observed space that he spent a lot of time drawing. We are going to do smaller drawings today, but I hope you can take some time and really look at an area that you may not have paid too much attention to before. The materials you'll need today are very simple. You will need a piece of paper and a pencil. I have a set of pencils here, but if you just have one, that's fine too. You might find charcoal and an eraser also useful. Also, if you do have access to a camera or a phone and you can take some photos, that's great. If not, you can just like make sketches and just go around and make small sketches in many places. But if you do have access to a phone or a camera, it does make the whole thing a little bit more interesting. It adds a layer to it, kind of a thing. So basically what I want you to do is I want you to go around your house and do almost like a scavenger hunt. I want you to go around looking for the places where, you know, workers have shown what they have done to make your house function. So I looked under the sinks, I looked at the edge of our counters or windows, meet drywall. I looked in the furnace rooms, like near around the furnace, and also in the ceilings where there's ducting that kind of shows. I also lifted up some of the grates in my house to kind of look underneath into the floor. And all these are places where tradespeople have worked to build your house and make it comfortable for you. I'd like you to take at least 10 to 12 photos or do at least 10 to 12 sketchbook quick sketches of those areas. And then if you have them in a sketchbook, you can cut them out and like get a bigger piece of paper to sort of arranging them around, sort of see what looks good. Or I imported my photos into a Word document and then sort of started cropping them and moving them around to sort of create a composition that I liked. I was looking for echoes of shapes and lines, and also sort of like the weight of certain areas and how there's like darker or lighter areas and some sort of things that lead your eye around the composition. So these are some of the like things I'm looking for as I'm choosing from my 10 to 12 drawings and winnowing that down to 4 to 6 drawings for your final composition. So this is my final photo composition here that I came up with, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer that into a drawing. Okay, so once you have your photo montage or you've cut out your sketches from your sketchbook and arranged them on a paper, you can get your drawing paper out. So what you can do is, depending on how many photos you have taken, you can fold your paper, like if you're deciding to go with 4 or 6 or 8 drawings, kind of depending on how you composed them, you can fold your paper into that many squares. I've gone with 6, as you saw in my photo montage, so I'm just folding the paper into 6 sections so that it is easy for me to sort of compose it in a square and straight manner like this. And then I will tape it up to my drawing board here and make the drawing. So that's kind of your first step, is just to divide your paper quickly and easily. Once you have your paper taped up, don't forget to take some of the stickiness off of the tape by putting it on your jeans first, or you might lose a bit of a corner, which is not ideal. Or use green tape or just tacks or something if you have it. So once you have your squares kind of set up on your drawing board, a couple of drawing tips are always start general to specific. So you start by just blocking in some general shapes without drawing very hard. I'm drawing very extremely lightly, sort of sketching out where I think kind of things will go, starting with the general outline. Everything is very lightly drawn. Looking at my photos or my previous sketches, or going back to the place where you started the drawing and doing a very light sort of sketching in of shapes kind of a thing. And then once you kind of got like your rougher outlines kind of figured out, you can start to go in and block in some color. This is where I use some charcoal. So I block in some of the areas that are darker, using charcoal. Also kind of in here, there's some shadow. There's some lines in here. So kind of So the final step is kind of going over all your lines and trying to make the lines really beautiful. So I think about the video that Amelia posted a few weeks ago, where we learned all these mark making techniques, and so trying to mimic some of those, try to like, when I'm drawing, I'm sort of like lifting and releasing sort of the pressure a little bit on my line to try to make the line a little bit more interesting and a little bit more like beautiful. You know, instead of just like straight simple lines, you kind of vary the pressure to really think about the mark that you're making as like the final sort of moments that you spend with your drawing, just to really kind of give it a personality or like a different feel. Not worrying too much about how straight the lines are. It's not that interesting. You know, in the photograph the lines are straight and that's its own thing. It's sort of a separate aesthetic, and kind of letting the lines wander a little bit sort of like highlights the fact that it's a drawing, not a photograph, not an exact replication, but an interpretation. Yeah, so that's one of the squares, and I'll continue going on and do all the squares and then show you the results after I'm done. So these are my final two products, a photo montage and a drawing. But the most important thing that I hope that you learned is about how to really look at something that you've maybe walked by and just ignored. It's really easy to overlook and maybe take for granted even some of the things that we see every day, and some of the people that have actually contributed a great deal to our lives by building these homes that we're now sheltering in. We care more about something, we spend a long time on it. And knowing that someone has spent so much time and effort to make these structures that we're now living in 24/7, carefully building them and making them comfortable for us, it helps me to feel grateful, not only to the people who built it and spent all that time, but also to nature for providing the materials, and really try not to overlook that or take that for granted. I would really love to see the work that you made. Please share on Instagram at #AFKFromHome. It'd be really cool to see what you guys thought and what you made coming out of this. Thank you very much. Hope you have a good one. Stay safe, everybody.